What's good, YouTube? It's your ball back with Abdul Aesthetics. And as you can tell from the thumbnail, we're going to talk about anxiety. Now, I know mental health issues as a whole, but especially the top two, which is depression and anxiety. They kind of go hand in hand in the sense of you either are on one side of the spectrum or you're on the other side. There are people who don't believe that anxiety and depression is a real thing. There are people who only believe that anxiety and depression is a real thing, which it is, but the only reason they believe that is because they either went through it or they're currently going through it. I'll leave a link for my video which I was talking about depression, but I just want to go in depth to give people better understanding of what anxiety is and to shed light on it for the people who are currently going through it. Let me back this camera up right quick. It's much better. So, what is anxiety? Anxiety is the result of years of suppressed emotions, negative thoughts, and not dealing with the problems that go on in here and in here. What I mean by in here and in here is in your mind and in your very being. Because when negative things happen, we tend to either bottle it up or immediately deal with it. And it's a lot harder to immediately deal with it. That's why a lot of people have anxiety. That's why a lot of people are depressed. So what it is basically a combination of all of those, suppressed thoughts, negative emotions, things you haven't dealt with. And over time, over years and years and years and years, it just like, they just keep it stacked on top of each other until eventually they can't go anywhere. So what happens? The cap blows off. So, I often talk about a cap system. There's only so many things that can happen before the end result happens. You see what I'm saying? So many things can lead up to the end result before it ultimately happens. So to go further into it, instead of just saying this is what it is, when you have anxiety, it really is a chemical imbalance in your brain. You try not to feel a certain way, but you can't help it in a sense. The only way you can help it is through counseling and dealing with the problems. You feel a sense of impending doom more than you should. You feel a high sense of negativity more than you should. You feel as though you're gonna die. You feel all the time. You feel as though you're gonna die all the time. You feel as though, something bad's gonna happen all the time. You have excessive worry, and a lot of things come along with having anxiety that are physical, like chest pains, sweats, random fatigue, having trouble sleeping, having trouble staying asleep, having trouble getting to sleep, having trouble with things that you usually did before you became an anxious person. What I mean by that is we take everyday things for granted because it's natural. We do it, like breathing, eating, walking, driving a car, talking, not having tooth pain. You know what I'm saying? It's just everyday things that we take for granted until something interrupts that. Like you get a toothache. If you get a toothache, the only other thing you think about other than the toothache itself is all the times you were cool and all the things you did when you didn't have a toothache. Knock on wood, if something happens to where you can't walk for a long period of time or you can never walk again, what will be on your mind other than the fact that you can't do this thing would be all the times that you were just taking your leg for granted and you were just walking about, your car breaks down. Other than the fact that the car is broken, you'll think that, oh wow, I used to just a couple days ago I was driving down the road, no problems, and now you take it for granted. It's one of those things. It's everyday thoughts. It's everyday thoughts that we take for granted that we don't really pay attention to because we're not anxious people at that time. But when we become anxious people, the smallest thing can set you off. Like, for example, you could be somebody who doesn't react to certain things. Like, you might get a bump on your arm. Just a crazy analogy. You might get a bump on your arm and you say, a few years ago, you'd be like, wow, there's a bump. Let me try to bust it. You just, play around with it if you're one of those people. But when you become anxious and you have a high sense of anxiety, you see a bump, you're like, holy shit, this could be cancer. This could be a tumor. I could be dying right now. What if I go to sleep and I don't wake up? What if somebody comes and stabs me while I'm sleeping? What if somebody does this? And then it just never stops. It just never stops. It's an ongoing thing until you eventually get to something in which I'm going to make a video about in and of itself, an anxiety attack. I'll definitely dive deeper into that in another video. So when you get to that level, that's when you start to experience things like panic attacks, anxiety attacks. And some people are fortunate enough, like me, to not have them very often. I only have had 3 anxiety attacks since I realized that I was an anxious person. But I know, and I've heard stories of people who have multiple anxiety attacks daily, multiple a week, multiple a month. It might be cool for like a month, and then every day for the next month there's just a panic attack. They just feel weird. And to backtrack slightly, to kind of wrap this up, a lot of other things, like I said, because it becomes physical to the point where you feel pain. You literally have, muscle tension. Feel as though you have pinched nerves. I don't know if you ever had a pinched nerve, but it is not fun. You feel these weird sensations. Your arms feel heavy. Your leg falls asleep more often. It just feels as though you're breaking down. It feels as though your body is breaking down. But what it all is a chemical imbalance in your brain due to the massive amount of stress, depression, and now anxiety that you've just been holding on to and you haven't been dealing with. And what your body does is it tries to deal with it in itself, and how it does is it makes you anxious, it makes you depressed. Stress levels elevate for no reason. And me making these videos, this is a way of dealing with the problem. The first step in dealing with any problem, whether it be drug addiction, any type of addiction, any problem ever, is to realize that you either have the problem or realize what the problem is. That's the first step, is realization. Once you realize, then you can move forward. That's what I'm doing now, because I went to counseling last week. I'm actually going to counseling next week, which is something that I used to frown upon back when I was younger, but now I can't see myself not going to counseling to talk about my problems and things that I never dealt with. A way of realizing what anxiety is and dealing with it, so that way you don't have to feel as though you don't have any way out. So, like I said, anxiety happens. You got some people who don't believe it, and you got some people who only believe it because they go through it or they went through it. So with that being said, hope you enjoyed this video. Like, share, comment, subscribe. Stay tuned for more funny, more fitness, and more mental health awareness videos. And I will see you guys soon. Deuce.